am I the person supposed to be looking for you?
Mm-hmm.
You need to talk, you know.
Unampigia simu leo, hashiki simu, kesho hashiki simu, ama labda akishika mnaongea kidogo anakuambia ngoja nifanye nini? Ni receive simu ya mtu mwingine, unaona?
Kama we've agreed on the projects I have and I have my own money. I have no problem yeye kuchip in whatever he has. Kama anataka, si ati I'm forcing him to do that.
Coming from Africa into Europe, people look at you as a not well formed. For example, taking dessert, taking appetizers, and then taking the main course.
But watu wengi sana ni hiyo nakwambia, they really fake. Like, okay, si ati fake. Picha wana update, mapicha wanaonekana wako poa, so demand home itakuwa too high.
Life beyond borders, you know, against the odds. Why is it becoming a common trend for Black Africans to feel like their skin being lighter? It's more interesting.
The rates at which people are bleaching are getting higher and higher by day because society has said what should be beautiful and what is not beautiful, you know?
It boosts your confidence. So that is what most ladies think. I saw the challenge that you posted. A black Porsche, a white Porsche. Not many people like white cars. Like, black looks more sexy, black looks beautiful. So, fair skin, black skin is also fair skin.
But when we come to casting these strong black women, we want to cast them for security guard roles. I don't know what ideas we're driving.
You start having different, like Nduko said, there's some places that don't even bleach. I am tempted to think about some other places as well.
There will be other competing outside factors that will affect your relationship. Like you have an issue with your partner, the first thing you do, you run to your friends, you run to your sisters, you run to your peers to get advice.
We have weak men out there, and there are men who are weak in all areas. So probably talking to somebody else about your sexual experiences in bed might have been their way of getting the other woman. I don't know. So I will not sit and defend that.
Masculinity is the nature of a man. Do we create nature?
Even as we say that the boy child is under siege, we need to ask ourselves, how have we brought up this boy child that we're talking about? Is it the Kababa generation? As long as it's the Kababa generation, we will always have problems.
So it is alarming at how much people are separating and divorcing, because people have started taking relationship to be just, people don't take the value and the vice that was there before. And when us we were growing up, separation, our parents never used to separate. They never used to go separate ways because it was a taboo, it was forbidden, it was unacceptable. In fact, in my Kikuyu tradition, if a man decided to take us another wife, he was not allowed to leave his first wife. He could take another wife but still maintain his first wife as his wife. So there wasn't so much of breakups that are there that we are seeing today.
I do agree with Nyokabi. Just to put it into perspective, 48% of all first marriages end in divorce. And that 79% of women and 89% of men usually have that opportunity to go and remarry. 68% of these remarriages always include kids.
You correct the behavior, you beat the behavior and not the child. But when it comes to punishment, you're attacking the person. I'm punishing you because you did 1, 2, 3 things.
If the couples that are involved in the family are able to show love unto each other and be able to commit unto each other and be able to communicate openly and truthfully, then the kids will be able to emulate the parents, and we shall be having a well-blended family.
Yes, 48% is a big number. I will not dispute with you to that 48, it's quite a huge number. But then again, that's the families that end up in divorce. These are relationships that are founded on the wrong foundation. These are relationships that goalposts shift inside the relationship. These are relationships of people who are not fully committed to the relationship. One party is not, the other party is. And these are relationships of people who just don't want to do the hard work.
Good evening. Welcome to Early's night. And tonight we are talking to gentlemen about gentlemen issues. And on this show, we get to discuss issues that focuses entirely on men and their effects on the men and the society. Welcome. My name is Likuyani Eli, and of course, for the next 50 or so minutes, I'll be hosting you together with one JamesMwathi in Nairobi, Kenya. Good evening, James.
Good evening, Eli. How are you?
Thank you so much for waiting on me. My apologies. We had a few technicals here and there, but we are ready to rumble. Of course, in the USA, we also have Gilbert Makomere. Good evening, Gilbert, and how are you this afternoon?
Good evening, Ellie and James. This afternoon, I'm doing good, and thank you for having me tonight.
Yes, it's another men's seat, right? And here, it's all about men and men mental health and the well-being of men. But tonight we take it differently. We want to discuss alcoholism and drug abuse. And of course, in this entirety of it, we want to discuss addiction. First things first, James, if I may engage you, sir, what is alcoholism?
Thank you, Eli. Interesting topic we have today. Now, alcoholism. If I was to define alcoholism, I would want to look at it from a different model than most people take it. I'd want to look at it from the medical angle. Why do I say this? For the longest time, we have this misconception that alcoholism is a self-inflicted malady, if I may say so. We find that in our country, for example, insurances do not or shy away from covering alcoholism and other addictions. And that's because they look at it from more of a moral and behavioral issue rather than a medical and science-based perspective. So in my defining or definition of alcoholism, I'd want to borrow from the American Society of Addiction Medicine, what we call ASAM, which is what we use or wherever I practice in my practice. That's the model that we borrow heavily from. And it defines alcoholism or addiction as a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, environment, and the individual's life experiences. Now, I know that's a mouthful, and probably we will break it down as we go along, because in that definition, we will also find some of the causes or what might predispose one to addiction or to alcoholism. Early.
Thank you, James, for that mouthful definition. And let me have Gilbert. Gilbert, you believe it's a disease, or is it more of a behavioral or genetic problem?
Thank you, Ellie, and thank you, our viewers, for joining us for this show today. My perspective is this is a multifaceted problem that manifests in various ways, which based on stressors, based on factors, both genetical, biological, medical, and environmental, determine how one is rated. So we cannot, I cannot just wake up today and I point on someone to be an alcoholic because of these reasons without maybe having to look at his life, previewing how his life runs around. So I think there are many, many factors involved before we term one an alcoholic.
That is many factors, and for you, that is a frequent, of course, lover of the film and the film industry. I believe you probably came across this clip here. So we're gonna air this and just find out why is alcoholism a topic for discussion tonight. James, I don't know how you've been able to view that, but that's a short clip from the movie Flight, played by pilot. Of course, that was Denzel Washington playing pilot who was Captain Whitaker. Do you see what we commonly see in our lives, especially as men, when we want to avoid the temptation, but the temptation seems to be moving even closer? James, is this a matter of behavior, as you put it, or is it circumstantial?
Ellie, it's not circumstantial. The movie depicts exactly what happens to an alcoholic. And number one, I usually tell people, nobody wants to drink on the job, for example. Nobody wants to get summonses by the boss. Nobody wants warning letters in his file. Nobody wants not to be able to pay his rent or to be able to cater for his children. But despite all this, we find that day after day, the person will continue indulging, even despite the negative consequences that come with the indulgence. Now, the question to ask is why? Yeah. I would also want to pose a different question, probably to our viewers, so that they can start thinking about this topic in a different perspective. Two people will start using alcohol at the exact same age, let's say probably 18 for the legal age. They are using the same brand of alcoholic beverage, using the same during or in the same number of days in a week or a month or whatever on a day. Why is it that one will end up becoming hooked while the other one continues being a social user for the rest of their lives? That is a question that would be interesting to try and figure out. Number two, when you find somebody has lost nearly everything, and they are at their rock bottom, what we call rock bottom, but they still cannot function without the substance, would you term that as circumstantial? Will you term that as behavioral? Will you term that as moral? Or will you term that as a disease? Gilbert, in his introductory statement, points out at genetics, and I agree with him 100%. But what I would like us to think about also, today I'm just provoking thoughts. Today my role is just to provoke thoughts. What I would want us to think about is, in genetics, medical, if, for example, somebody got diabetes from genetic predisposition, would we say that it is behavioral? Or would we say that it's a medical condition? So these are questions that arise. Again, coming back to that movie, Emily, and for the benefit of those of us who have watched it, it depicts this pilot who, despite the high nature of the job, he needs a lot of vigilance and a lot of care. He still finds himself using. Why? Is it that it is a behavioral, or is it that he just can't do without? Probably when we come later on in the show, when we come to the symptoms of alcoholism, we will be able to see some of the things, or why, not some of the things. We might be able to see why one might not be able to stay without the substance in the system once they have crossed the line. I usually tell people there's a very thin line between social use and addiction, because for a social user, they will use for the rest of their lives without any problem. But for somebody with addiction issues, there will be very many negative consequences, but the brain is not able to learn about these negative consequences. Finally, so that I give you a chance to talk, I usually tell people addiction is like if you have a small child, and the lights go away and you light a candle. Any small child who has never seen fire or who has never seen a candle will try and touch the flame. So, yeah. But what usually happens, in fact, I encourage parents not to disallow their children to touch. Let them touch because it is part of learning. It's part of life. What will happen is that this child will touch the flame, they will get burnt, and chances are that they will not repeat that experience because the brain has recorded and learned that if I touch a flame, I get burnt and there is subsequent pain. Now, that is the same thing that happens to an alcoholic, but in a reverse way. They indulge, they suffer negative consequences, but they do not learn. So the following day, they will repeat the same experience, and the following day, and the following day. Nobody wants or loves sleeping on the beach, so that every day it's raining and he has blacked out by the beach, and everybody is passing and looking at him with pity. He will wake up and say, I will never do this again, but tomorrow you'll find him in the same spot. So for me, it's very, very clear it's a disease.
Well, James, you've actually laid a lot of background for us to move forward this discussion. And of course, you want to engage, just send us your comments in the comment section with the hashtag responding to live. Equally, you can use hashtag @inheart. Back to you, Gilbert. Where I come from, alcohol is supposed to be anything and everything. We enjoy alcohol during funerals. We enjoy alcohol during celebrations such as, once you make it in life, the first thing you have to order is a big party and make sure that alcohol is actually provided and flowing. For a minute, I sit down and I think probably Jesus might have just been from my village, because among other miracles that he performed included the making or turning of water into wine. Is it just because we are a drinking nation, or Gilbert, there's more to it that alcohol brings to the table?
Thank you, Eli. I think this is a societal thing. It just depends with how our society has been crafted. We celebrate and take alcohol as a communal ritual, which you'll find it in many occasions. We'll tend to glorify it as a most important thing. But the problem, to me, I don't think is the availability of it. The problem is the misuse of it, because availability of it does not provoke misuse. Misuse now is the habit, the addiction, and the consumption. At that point, you cannot tell yourself it's not enough. That is the point now you start abusing. When you are fond of abusing, you develop dependence. When your dependence has reached that tolerable stage, you now fall into addiction. So for me, I don't think there is something bad with us glorifying it. The problem is misusing it. I think that's our major discussion today.
So when do you start using and abusing alcohol, James? When do you say, now I am actually using alcohol, and when does the abuse come in?
Thank you, Eli. Again, I want to echo and emphasize something that that Gilbert says. Number one, alcohol is not bad on its own. I like disputing that myth. Alcohol on its own, it's not bad. Alcohol is legal. Alcohol is used socially by millions and millions of people. Yeah. So alcohol on its own, it's not bad. Now, what happens is there are people who can use alcohol safely, and there are people who do not have the capacity to use alcohol safely. Okay. So that is the biggest distinction. Now, you ask, when do you know that you have started using alcohol in the wrong manner, or you have crossed the line? I'd say off head, without even looking at the symptoms and everything, when you start using alcohol to manipulate emotions, that's when now you know you're crossing the line. What do I mean by manipulating emotions? You get angry and thing that
I think we just lost James, and we will try get him back to us. Gilbert, when do you start imagining and realizing that you are abusing alcohol? James, are you back? James?
Yeah, I had not gone anywhere.
For a moment, we thought you are using and abusing the internet. well, as before, actually, you see, I think we are having a problem with James. James, we seem to be losing you. Kindly fix your connection and let's have you back. Probably I'm the only one experiencing this. Yeah, kindly fix that and let's have you back on set. Gilbert, James was starting us off on the times that we notice that things are not just okay. And where do you think we can say that things are not okay? That now I've stopped enjoying alcohol, I'm more of abusing alcohol.
First of all, when we start experience problems with tolerance, problems with withdrawal, when we start having affinity to drinking, and then when we have like unsuccessful attempt to stop usage of it, and you fall into it all the time, you're stopping, and you are having that urge to be there. And then when you start drinking despite evidence of negative effects on your physical or mental health.
Okay, I'll leave you at that for the moment. Let's take a look at this clip. Yes, wanaume wawache pombe ya kupindukia. And for those who do not understand that language, ideally in a nutshell, it's about women. That is back in 2014. That report, I believe, was filed by Evelyn Wamboi then on Citizen TV. And the topic that is about the excessive consumption of alcohol that has now made their men docile. And if you thought that was just but a joke, this is what women in Central Kenya talked about alcoholism.
Mpaka kutereva ngari ya usiku, wale walioa hawana wanaume. Wakienda pale kutereva ngari hawezi tereveka.
Akina mama kutoka vijiji vitatu eneo bunge la Runyenjes, kaunti ya Embu, wamedhihirisha masikitiko yao kuhusiana na idadi kubwa ya wazee wao ambao wamepotelea kwenye mvinyo. Kina mama hao wamesema kuwa wazee wao wameshindwa kutekeleza majukumu ya nyumbani, hivyo basi kupotelea kwenye mvinyo, hali ambayo imewasababisha kuandaa maandamano.
So we were in the coastal region and now in the central region. And gentlemen, very quickly, James, men are now unable to perform their husband duties. Does it get that bad?
Definitely, Eli, it does. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised by what the women are saying. These are things we see, especially for those of us who practice. These are things that we see every day. Yeah, there are some of the symptoms that come or that accompany addiction. We have to understand that for when one becomes an alcoholic, everything else becomes secondary, and drug seeking or seeking of the alcohol takes priority over everything else. That's why somebody who is employed will fail to go to work and rather go to the bar. That's why somebody, rather than go to his wife in the evening, will start the day drinking, and by the time it's getting evening, he's blacked out. So this is not something that's odd. It's not something that I'm personally surprised about. Number two, we also need to understand that due to excessive alcohol use, most biological functions start to cease to function. Yeah. So, for example, again, taking into cognizance that we are past the watershed period, even erecting for the man becomes a problem. They are not feeding well. They are not even showering, so it's not even attractive to the woman. So yeah, this is something that we see every day. The kidneys are failing, hata nguvu za kiume hamna. So this is something that's very common, especially in areas that have a drinking problem. Ellie. And again, sorry, I'll keep on jumping in and out of conversations that we've had, because I heard you talk about culture. And I'd want to say, yes, alcohol is huge in our cultural events. Yeah? But you'd be surprised that apart from this generation that we are in, previously in older generations, even though they used alcohol, they had a very systematic way of doing it, such that they avoided people getting into alcoholism. I was looking, for example, at the Kikuyu culture. And they had that pot that they used to drink Muratina from, and it was communal. And what would happen was the older men who had more than 2 or 3 wives would be at just next to the pot, and behind them would be people with lesser wives, like that, and the outermost circle would be for people with just 1 wife. And the rationale behind it, in that cultural setting, they would say, if you had your wife screaming, and she was facing some problems or difficulties, and you are the center, before you came from the center all the way, your wife might have died, and you only have 1. So you need to be next to the door, so that if your wife screams, you're the first one to get out. But if you are the center and you have 7 wives, even if one gets into problems, there are 6 others to try and help her. Definitely, it's an analogy just to explain that the older and more settled you are in the community, the more allowed you are. Yeah, the younger you are, you consumed less. So they had some checks and balances. Now, the problem with us and this generation is we are starting to drink at a very early age, before our brains are fully mature, before we realize our potential and our goals and our identity. So you find that by the time most people are hitting probably their mid years or their most productive lives, they are already wasting away due to alcohol and other substances.
Sorry. Apologies. James, do you think young people have too much money to spend, and that's why probably alcohol consumption and drug, for that matter? I mean, we said alcohol and drug abuse, but is it because there's too much money circulating, or is it because they are facing economic problems that need them now to unwind with a lot of alcohol?
Ellie.
Sorry, that was meant for Gilbert. Sorry.
Okay, let Gilbert take it.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ellie. One thing I would want to say that it's not that our youth have a lot of money to spend. It's the way our social fabrics are being woven now. The way our society is made up. What are our morals? What defines us as a society? What are the steps that guide us in who we are in our society? Much of these problems are now societal. Our environment is breaking up because there are no moral cops. First thing, our morality is weighing down. So there's nothing for you to look up to. the people you look up to and help them as like, these are my role models, they are nowhere. Those are the people misleading the society. Last time we talked about social media. Social media came with its positive impact on the society, but also it has its negativity on the society. We learn now a lot, not even from the society that surrounds us, we learn more on the internet, which might not be around us. It's around us by presence, but what you are learning might not be around us. So the influence that is in the society is leading us to come up with vices which were not there. Like the way James was referring to during our times and during the times of our dads and grandfathers, how they used to relate, how they used to carry themselves. It's totally different with what is happening now, because we are living in a dispensation where social media is the moral code for the kids. Parents are busy fending for their children. Those who are supposed to guide the society are the one misleading it. So what we are picking from the people that are supposed to guide us in the society are the vices. So the vices replicate in the characters we portray, in the openness. So we can't even say that youth have a lot of money to spend and such of the things. No. Presence of money does not predict abuse of what is present in our social gatherings. It's the moral. What is your morality telling you to? What are we learning? Who are these people we are looking up to in the society? What is the society teaching the young ones? Society yetu imevunjika. And it comes with implications. And these are some of the implications.
I would like to be of the same school of thought, but I believe, especially for the commercial people, they tend to use our so-called role models that we have adopted to actually sell and pitch their product. If you see a beautiful lady advertising and a lady-friendly drink and looking cool, then we tend to buy into that idea. So, James, when does it become too far when we talk about advertisement and that so-called positioning of some material, especially for drug use and abuse? Oh, James is on planet muted. Okay, welcome back, James.
All right. You're asking when does it become too much? When does one become too much?
No, the adverts that are aiming.
Oh, the adverts. Okay.
Because you see, Gilbert already said that we look up to some role models, including the social media space. And you find most of these bigwigs, we'll call them, in the entertainment industry, will come there, advertise a beverage, an alcoholic one for that matter. And then they'll be nice enough to say, not for sale for persons under the age of 18. But the people consuming their music are basically the people under the age of 18. How does that come into play, and how do you balance that?
Ellie, I will say without apology that alcohol sale is huge business and it is not about to go away. We can't pass the blame. We can't say it's the advertisers or the marketers who are making the society drink to the extent that they are drinking. That's too lame. That's giving away our responsibility. I'll go back to what Gilbert says. Our moral fiber has broken. Again, when we go back to the adverts, for example, we will have two brands of adverts advertising margarine. It doesn't force you to go and buy both, irrespective of who is the role model in that. Yeah, I firmly believe as society, as families, we failed. Again, let me tie this with the question you had posed earlier, whether it's too much money that the youth have. And I want to invite you to Nairobi one of these days, and we go out on the party scene on a Friday, and you will see both extremes of the spectrum, the very rich and the very poor, and they both will have they'll both be as high as a kite. You'll find very high-end children driving their father's latest series of vehicles, trooping all the way to Carnival and Langata and Westlands and all that. But you'll be shocked, Ellie, that in the same town with 25 shillings, you will find spirits that will make you high. I know of wines and spirits that sell half of the bottle. You know, the bottle that is sealed and is sold at whatever price. So they open and they sell half. They call it kukata, nikatie nusu. Yeah. So we can't again blame money. We both the very high end and the very low, they are able to afford the whatever substance that they are consuming. So I'll go back to the family and how we are socialized and how we are cultured, and the values and beliefs that we inculcate in our children as they grow up. Again, remember, we are the same society where we take them out on Sundays to wash the cars. We go with our families to wash the cars, and we place the children on the bouncing castle as we dance to Mugithi with a bottle of beer there and nyama choma. How on earth would you tell your children then not to drink? We are the same society that have thought it is sophisticated to have a bar in the house. So you have this bar in the house that has a range of all the wines and spirits. And how do you tell your children then that this is not good? So we are the ones who are predisposing them to this. I will not go the route of blaming advertisers.
Thank you, James. I think the advertisers are very happy to listen that and hear that from a psychologist, because then they were about to roast me on that one. Parents taking their responsibilities. And I want to go deeper into this. Let's just look at the common signs and symptoms. I'm not talking about the sophisticated ones. I'm talking about the common ones that James will look and say, okay, this person is now an addict. They're abusing alcohol and it's time to look for help. But before you do that, let's look at this short clip once again. Now, I was intoxicated. Those are some heavy words there that come, and I'm not saying, I mean, for the sake of clarity, this is just material to try and illustrate what we are talking about, courtesy of the movie or film Flight. James, admission that you are actually at that level that you need help, or is it just because now you see that your result of drinking or over engaging is causing other people's livelihoods or life for that matter? What's your take?
Ellie, I have a passion for, I think by now you know I practice addiction treatment, and I have a passion for this particular line of psychology, because addiction is one of the most misunderstood branches of psychology. Yeah, and addicts are people who have conscience. We look at addicts and we think they are these unfeeling human beings who have no remorse, and they're just out to destroy lives and harm and hurt everyone in their path. But you'd be surprised that when you sit down with somebody who is going through alcoholism, you realize that they suffer. They're suffering. Number one, they fully understand the harm that they are causing to both themselves and to others. Number two, they do have a conscience and they do have remorse. Yeah, I would shock you to tell you that, and that's why I started by saying this is a disease. I'd shock you by telling you that by the time some people get help, it is because they have tried on their own and they seriously and honestly cannot stop. And at times, to shock you even further, stopping on their own is not encouraged because it can be fatal. In fact, we usually advise people, for those who want to bring people for treatment, one of the side effects or one of the symptoms of alcoholism is when they try to stop on their own, they might go into fits. Yeah. And when one is in fits or is having convulsions, and you are not near a hospital setting, so you can't get medical help, what we usually advise people is before you get them to the nearest medical facility, then give them a little bit of their favorite drink. That brings back the equilibrium and it sorts the fits or the convulsions. This is not to say that we are advocating for drinking, but when it comes to a matter of saving life, then would rather the person takes a shot of his vodka that will get him to the hospital rather than have him convulse and probably cause brain damage. So when I see that movie and I hear that confession, I fully understand where he's coming from. At times, we want help, but we don't know how to ask for help. We want help, but society has placed so much stigma around alcoholism that we are not able to speak up. So I have dealt with countless people who genuinely come and cry and tell you, I don't know what to do. I stop, I start hallucinating at night. I can't sleep. I am hallucinating. I am seeing animals chasing me. I'm falling into bottomless pits. The only way for me to sleep is to drink. And that's why when, I don't know if we'll have time to discuss treatment, but one of the first phase of treatment is usually detoxification. And detoxification is simply the medical removal of the toxins in the person's body. So they are given antipsychotic medication to help with the hallucinations. They are given sedatives to help with the sleep. They are given strong doses of multivitamins to help in repair of damaged nerve endings, and so on. Yeah. So I fully understand where that the movie is coming from and what he's going through.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, James. Gilbert, do you believe somebody can actually take the step and be their own, take their own lead and actually try to seek to heal themselves out of that situation, or it needs more of help from a third party?
I believe that can happen, only it depends with the level of addiction. It depends with how deep you are rooted into what you're trying to come out. Because first thing, most people will live in denial that they are not addicted to, because they are using much to maintain the same effect, because the more you use, the more you get used to it. So the more you get used to it, the more you want to consume to gain the same effect, because after some times of using, you get used to being okay with what you are using. So you'll want to use more to maintain the same effect on you. So I believe, depending with how deep you are into the problem, and also a realization of how you will manage the process. The reason why you always hear a professional saying you need to seek professional steps into coming out of the situation is, you might notice you are in a problem, but you might not know how to get out and how to maintain, so that you don't find yourself after some time you're fallen into it. Because as James said, there are aftermath effects that you'll continue going through them. Are you able to handle them during that time? That's why they always say, look for accountability. And accountability means, mostly when we look for professionals. Professionals have gone through the system. They know how to. Secondly, they have handled same situation. Thirdly, they are able to work with you and be able to take stock of you. Because mostly, sometimes we want to get out of it sometimes for the wrong reason. Maybe to impress others, maybe to look you are good, maybe to impress your boss so that you don't get fired. And you might be pretending in the eyes of many until you realize you're just pretending to yourself. So when you have accountability part on you, it's easy to walk down that journey because it's always step by step. Someone watching over you, someone walking with you, not working for you, walking with you through the process until you depart, you readjust from the lifestyle. Thank you.
Go ahead, James.
I just thought probably just very briefly, I'd want to speak as to why it's so difficult at times to quit, even when we know or the person knows that they are facing negative consequences. I'll try to not be too wordy or use too much jargon, but alcohol and substances of abuse act on the part of the brain that is tasked with the reward system, what is called the reward system of the brain. Yeah? So what usually happens is that whenever you use whatever substance that you're using, it goes into the reward system of your brain and triggers a chemical called dopamine in your brain. Now, dopamine is tasked with making you feel good. Dopamine is the same chemical that is released when you eat good food, when you laugh, when you nurture, you have a child, and when you have sex. That's the same chemical that's released in your brain. But now what happens is that with substances and alcohol, it causes an overproduction of that feel-good chemical that we are calling dopamine. Yeah, such that other activities, other life activities become less significant. So you get more pleasure in drinking than having sex. You get more pleasure in drinking than eating or nurturing or all that. Now, what Gilbert is calling tolerance is simply your brain trying to get the same effect that it got when you first used. So you initially, for example, took one shot of whiskey and you felt really nice. The brain registers that feel-good effect. And the brain will always try to repeat that experience for the same feel-good effect. So you'll find that you keep on drinking and trying to replicate that effect. Now, that's the main reason why, despite the negative consequences, the brain has already registered what we call power of association, that whenever I take a shot of whiskey, I feel good. Now, you go a step further, and I talked briefly about manipulation of feelings. You go a step further and you realize that whenever I'm angry and I take a glass of whatever substance, I sleep like a baby. Or whenever I am sad and I take a shot, the sadness goes away. So you start manipulating feelings. And manipulation of feelings comes with what we call self-medicating. Again, now you start medicating life's situations with the substance. And that is where now you know that you've crossed the line. When you cannot deal with life's challenges and stressors without the substance. So you start, and that's where the whole term or concept of dependency comes in. You become dependent on the alcohol to solve your issues. So, for example, you have a bad day in the office, you do not put in your 100%, your boss passes by your desk, makes a little noise, you get very angry, you go and drink, and tomorrow you come in smelling of booze, or you do not come in on time, and the boss gets more angry, gives you a letter, and you become more angry, and you go and drink, and it becomes a vicious cycle. Yeah. So by then, you've started now self-medicating whatever situations that you're facing with the substance. But the brain is also trying to replicate the initial feel-good effect. So I just thought I would want to explain that briefly.
Thank you, James. And I've heard about the feel-good effect and the fact that, you don't want to take responsibility here and there. Gilbert, if you were to look at it as from the human science part of it, do you of the opinion or school of thought that we tend to put our addiction to these substances and alcohol in particular and blame it on probably our friends, relatives, jobs, or anything else? Is it more of a blame game in some cases, or is it because that we are looking for our way out?
Thank you, Eli. First of all, before we forget, there's a study I was going through, and one of the findings from that study was that the risk of developing alcoholism has a genetic component. That is one thing they found. Studies have demonstrated that close relatives with people with alcoholism are more likely to become alcoholics themselves. And however, there is no special gene that has been discovered, because that was a study, and of course it leaves a door open for other people to study on it. But the fact that people have done a study and drawn a conclusion that it is possible that alcoholism might be based on a genetic component, being that some people are predisposed even before they are born. So you are born with the syndrome. It only needs stressors for it to come out. Once it comes out, that's why James insisted it's a primary chronic disease that needs to be looked at as more of a disease than a blame. Because we might tend to blame. We might tend to heap a blame on those people who are alcoholics. But there is something more than even them, they can't control it if we don't look at it at a medical perspective. So trying to say that we blame it on addiction or something of the sort, I tend to think it might be a wrong angle, because someone might not know. That's first thing from the study I just read to you. And they also said, according to them, it was alcoholism develops on two angles. There is, though not proven, this one they said it was just an observation, because those who are professional in this field have not ascertained it, but they say it develops on two angles, where like the youth in 20s associate alcohol with desire to relieve stress, anxiety. And then there is that level where people drink is primarily to get high and is associated with violence, destructiveness, and other criminal and antisocial behaviors. So it depends. This addiction, you are picking it for what? If it's because of psychosocial and environmental factors, but if it's because of the genetic factor, as I said, there you can't blame someone. Or all the three aspects, you can't blame someone, because when someone is falling into a ditch, they might know when they are going in, but they might not know how deep they are going in. We, the observers, at times, people themselves and the professionals are the one who can like look at it and see based on the effect, because some of the effects that come with excessive consumption include poor nutrition, memory disorders, difficulty with balance and walking, liver diseases. When we see such in someone, we know this is going too much. So what can we do? First thing we always say, if someone can realize that I'm deep into it, I need help, well and good. If not, it needs to be diagnosed. And by diagnosing, is that person willing? And is he accepting that they are deep into it and they need change? So I don't think we can blame anyone, because sometimes people are in and they don't know. People are in and they know. They are looking for a way to come out. But as James said, your brain registered is into it. You have a desire Wakenya husema roho inataka lakini mwili imekataa.
Talking about the body refusing to accept that, you know, things have to be done, and there's willingness. James, do we have hope for alcoholics and drug abusers? Because as we speak, I think those clips that we have watched have shown how deep the problem is. Do we have hope for them? There's a great audio distortion on your end, James. Kindly, if you may fix this for us, then we can be able to read you back. I'll try to get James back. So let me just quickly go to the comment section, Gilbert, if you allow me. We have Kipro Roda, who says, sometimes I have a feeling like professions tend to make the matter worse. Okay, I will ask James to respond to that. Then there is this one, Gilbert from Sarah, who says, avoiding people, places, and things associated with your former drug abuse can help a lot, I believe. But is avoiding the solution? Because we know human character. Is it avoiding or choosing not to? That's a question I'm posing to you, Gilbert. We have something here that from Nancy, who says, standing by your partner, friend, or family members' progress during and after the treatment is very important. Be empathetic, let them know that you are there if they need you or if they need someone to talk to. Let's see if we have James back. James, how are you doing? We completely lost you, James. Your audio is completely out. We can hardly hear you. I probably your battery is out. Just fix your audio. Let's have a correspondence from Gilbert on this. Gilbert, what do you think about those statements?
For me, I don't think avoiding is not the right thing, but also we say it depends with your healing process. What have you like professionally? Someone said in the comments that he or she thinks that professionals sometimes make it worse. It depends with the approach. As I said, you might live in denial and don't know you are in a problem. Did you come out openly? Were you helped to come out? Were you forced into coming out? Because people can see this guy is deep in alcoholism. We need to get him. People can tell you, man, you are deep into alcoholism. And then you are like, yeah. And then you can look at your life and say, man, alcoholism has driven me to this far. So it depends. All these things I say, it's multifaceted factors. The approaches, your approach towards coming out might not be the same approach to the other person. So the approach each of us take in rehabilitating from is what will determine how fast you will stand, if you'll ever go back, and how effective you will be after overcoming the addiction. So it's not about blaming this or blaming this person or this. Professionally, and also people make lapses, we might have taken a route that was not best for you. We might sit down, reevaluate, and see if we can take another route that will be helping to that person. Because you might meet professionals who want to help you. And as I said, most of addiction is mind and body. So you might want to impress that you are doing what is supposed to, but deep down, you know very well, wakati you are in darkness, the things you are doing, you can only account to yourself, because people, even if you are working with someone, people can't follow you into your private and personal life. You can agree on what you're supposed to do, but what do you do when you are alone? When no one is watching you apart from you and God, is what matters. And some people don't have that willingness. It's not having it. You might not be enabled. You might not have the control. to even walk that path. So the results are totally different. Totally different. The way someone will come out of addiction will be totally different. That's why someone can take 2 days, can take a month, can take. There are those people, as I have read from the comment, there are those people who can wake up today and they say enough is enough. I will not. Even without avoiding, even without sitting close to people who are using alcohol. They said it, they meant it, they walked it. So we are not the same. That's why it affects people differently.
Thank you, Gilbert. I just want to hope that actually we can be able to hear James speak to us according to the book of James, because I would like to ask James. I think one of the biggest, I would say, character I've seen of alcohol or drug abusers, they have one thing that common cheats will use. It's called the 3D. Deny, deny, and deny. Are you drunk? No. I'm not drunk. Did you see alcohol? Never. And you can see they're drunk. Does this become part of them, or is it just a tactic to look good and, try not to look bad? James, if you can unmute your microphone from your end. Yep.
If you can't hear me this time, it will be fine. Can you hear me?
Finally, yes.
We will fight.
What do you think of the 3Ds? Deny, deny, deny. Used
Now,
with alcoholics and drug abusers.
What you ask is very important, Ellie. We might laugh about it, but what you ask is very important. Now, because of either perceived or real failure to meet expectations, both personal and societal, the addict will become very manipulative. Yeah. Again, ask yourself, how is somebody able to drink 365 days a year, 24/7, and they don't have a job? Yeah. So part of the symptoms and part of the personality that somebody develops is high manipulative tendencies. So they will deny. Again, remember, when a person is high, there is impairment in judgment. So while they think that nobody is seeing that they are high, everybody can see that this person is high. But in their cognitive functioning, they are thinking, if I put on a straight face, everybody will think I am not high. And that's the 3Ds: deny, deny, deny. So for them, it makes sense. But for everybody else, they can see that it's denial, in short. Again, I usually say addiction is one of the saddest diseases. Why do I say so? Because everybody around the person can see that the person is suffering, except the person who is suffering themselves. Yeah, I usually tell people, when you get malaria, you're the first person to know, because you can feel you're aching, you have headaches, fevers, what, all those things. But when you have a substance use disorder, you continuously tell yourself that you're okay, while everybody else around you can see there is a problem. So that's one of the saddest parts of this disease. Number two, again, something I wanted to comment, and you kept on muting me. I still believe firmly that you are muting me intentionally. Something that I wanted to comment on was what Gilbert talked about genetics. And I wanted to explain again, just briefly, how this genetic comes into play. Number one, I agree with Gilbert. Studies are still ongoing. They have not found the particular gene responsible for addictive personality or tendencies. But Gilbert, they have termed it as the X factor. So it said that you have the genetic X factor that would predispose you to substance use disorders or addiction. Now, what usually happens is you can either inherit that, you do not inherit addiction. You inherit the capacity to become an alcoholic faster. So all you need is the trigger points, the push factors. What Ellie was asking Gilbert a few minutes ago, whether peer pressure and sijui nini can lead you into addiction. On their own, they cannot lead you, but they are push factors, they are triggers that if you're not able to withstand, they will definitely lead you into addiction. Number two, again, to try and understand a little bit of genetics, what usually happens is alcohol use causes structural changes to the brain. If you do brain imaging for a person who has not used alcohol and a person who has used alcohol for a number of years, you will find, and again, you can find all this on the net. If you Google, you'll see all this imaging. You will find that there are structural changes in the brain, and some functions, not functions, some parts of the brain are usually the first to be affected. Parts that are responsible, what we call neurotransmitters. You affect or damage some neurotransmitters in your brain. And at the most severe, again, I would want to invite people to use Google. You can get what we call wet brain syndrome. Yeah. And wet brain syndrome occurs when you have completely damaged the brain to the fact, to the point that your walking is impaired, your cognitive functioning is impaired, your thinking capacity. So all this will change the structure of your DNA. Yeah. And genetic predisposition will act just like the way albinism acts. Yeah, you can have an albino gene, but it does not manifest. So you carry it, but it is recessive. It's the same with the addiction or the alcoholic gene. You can have it, you carry it, but it is recessive, such that you never become an alcoholic. Why? Because the right trigger points have not been triggered. So that genetic factor is real and it's there. Invite our listeners to just go and do a little bit of reading. If somebody says at times professionals make it worse, I can tell you for a fact that people come to us. We do not go to people. People come to us. And these services are not free. I usually tell people, when I see you, I will not see you for free. I'll charge. And your family will have come. So why would your family pick you without any reason and bring you to a professional? Again, this is one of those, I don't know from what angle the viewer comments on this, but this is an argument I hear every day, but from people with substance use disorders, and it's part of denial mechanism. They will give you all sorts of stories. I've been told my people are bringing me so that they can sell my shamba. My people are bringing me so that they can certify that I am not rational and I can't make decisions. So I hear all manner of things, but I usually tell people, nobody will burn their money. Nobody will waste their money when there is no problem. So I would rather look at it objectively rather than subjectively. Wholesomely, I am not, again, I'm a realist. I don't for 1 minute pretend that there are no quacks in the industry, that there are no people out to make money from cases that they should not be making money. I won't pretend that it does not happen. But if you look at it objectively, most instances for a family, and again, back to a question you had asked, whether the person can see for themselves and seek treatment. Yes, we have such people, but the bigger percentage are the people who will not see a problem, and they will require an intervention from people close to this person for them to seek help. So for the person whose family or significant others seek interventions, that's where you'll find such arguments that you're just blowing hot air when there is no problem.
Thank you so much, James, for that insight. And I will invite Gilbert to give his closing remark because we are really out of time. And apologies for the late delay of the show. We had to bring some things into perspective. And Gilbert, your closing remarks.
My closing remarks, I would want to say alcoholism is real. It's a disease. It's eating our society. We need an active and urgent solution to it. This goes to like our government structures and our society, the way it's woven, the way our policies and laws are made. We have bodies who have been mandated to look into these issues, but I don't think they are being active in their role, because these are things that are eating the society from down. We might not see it today, we might not see the effect of it today, but in the near future, it's coming to affect the whole society the way it will appear. Most secondly, I invite the institution and people mandated in this area to do more research. You know, most of us, we depend on the hearsay and the data that are presented without testing this data on people to see actually how is this data, where are we headed. If we negate science and we negate researching on these issues that are coming up in the society, they will eat us in the near future. We should be prepared today and be prepared to handle what today will affect tomorrow. If you are not taking care of today, our tomorrow is in limbo. So let us leave this dispensation. If you know you are sliding into addiction, man, if you know you have like a relative, you have a friend, you have a partner sliding into addiction, help them when it's still this early. Let them realize our approach is very important. You can't bombard them. The best thing you can do, approach them in a good way and stand with them. Let us not be ready to accuse. Our society is more of accusing. It points accusing finger. Our institutions are after accusing and prosecuting. After that, how have you helped this person? Even if you force someone into rehab today, they went there unwilling. They went there to please you, but they have themselves to recognize after the rehab. So if from rehab and someone is like, I was forced into this rehab, they will still slide back into addiction because they were never in that rehab. Their body was there, but the spirit was not there. The spirit will come back to addiction. And then thirdly, this is a disease. Let us take more of medical way. Let us diagnose and let us come up with ways of helping those who are in addiction and those who are suffering from addiction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gilbert, for those remarks. Let me have the final touch from, I think James decided to go to East. Oh, James, you're still there. You are listening with your neck, watching the comments. I think somebody might have said something that you didn't expect, but anyway, this is how it goes on live show. What do you have to say, sir, as we close? And number two, do you think we have enough help for these people as we finish?
I'll start with your second question. Do we have enough help for these people? We are getting there. We are not yet there, but we are getting there. What we are seeing now is a bit better than a few years ago. We are not yet out of the woods, but at least there is some light at the end of the tunnel. I say this because every so often, sporadically, we see the government come into play and step up measures and try and set up a few treatment facilities, and they pick up and then they fizzle out. But at least there's some recognition that addiction is a mental disorder. So we are much better than we were a few years ago. We are not yet out of the woods. To your first question, my closing comments, I think Gilbert has captured most of what I would have wanted to say, but what I would say, I'd go back to where we began by the definition. Yeah, addiction is a primary chronic progressive disease. Now, just those three. Chronic means it gets worse. Chronic and progressive, it gets worse over time. How one is today is not the way they'll be next year, and it's not the way they were last year. So unless we seek treatment, the disease can only continue becoming progressive. Now, I have invited people to read on the wet brain syndrome, but that's just one of the many disorders that might occur. I can tell you for free that addiction will trigger depression, addiction will trigger bipolar mood disorders, addiction will trigger anxiety disorders. So we can start with addiction as a standalone, or alcoholism as a standalone, but the more we do not treat it, the more the likelihood that it triggers other mental disorders, such that in 5 years' time, while we could have dealt with just alcoholism, now we have to deal with alcoholism and other mental illnesses like depression. Finally, again, to parents and to significant others, do not tire. Addiction treatment is not a one-day event. There are a lot of issues that may trigger alcoholism. There are underlying issues, there are developmental issues, there are psychiatric issues, and all these have to be unearthed for us to treat the alcoholism successfully. So do not tire. It is not a one-day event. You will need, I've had one of the comments, somebody say they will have to work with a partner. That is very true. But even as you work with a partner, you need to be very careful not to be an enabler, because now that's another. Alcoholics know how to play the victim mentality, the victim card. They will play it so nicely that you'll always feel guilty on their behalf. So when we are dealing with alcoholics and we are doing alcohol addiction treatment, we usually incorporate the family, because the family has to also change the roles that they have usually played. When you wake up in the morning and your husband is hungover in the bed, and you have to call the workplace and lie, leo ni mgonjwa asikii vizuri hata kuja, you are enabling him. Yeah. Addiction is the only disease that the person gets to make a choice and not face the consequence. That's how we perpetuate the alcoholism. So all families also need to change the way they interact with the alcoholic if we are to achieve any levels of success. Finally, professionals are not miracle workers. This is something that we need the whole family to play their role. So again, I say this because I've seen families that come and give us their person, ndio huyo tibu, and they disappear for 3 months, and then they come back, leteni kama amepona. It never works that way. We need to work together, all of us, for any success to be achieved. But my final comment, very, very final, it is treatable, and people actually get better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, JamesMwathi, and of course, Gilbert Makomere, for coming on board tonight. We had an interesting discussion. For those who missed out on the opening remarks, kindly go back to the session, rewatch, share, like, and follow the pages. If you want to find out what we are up to, kindly log on to Facebook, YouTube, if you wish, and just wait for the notification button to be turned on. Then you're able to know what we are up to. Tomorrow, catch me with Nyokabi Kamau as we discuss the right signal. This is gonna be a little bit more steamy. So for those who are in love or probably thinking of that, this is the place to be tomorrow night from, of course, that is 9:30 p.m. Kenyan time. Keep the time, keep the date, and of course, set your alarms and invite your friends and family. Gentlemen, unfortunately, we had an extended version of this, but we had to do what we had to do. We could not cover every single talk we wanted to cover. But let me appreciate the people in the comment section for making time. Of course, Kipro Roda, very contributive tonight. Thank you so much for stepping in. We had Sarah and Jonjo equally there. The rest of the team that was sending in their messages, including Nancy. And I'm impressed that actually ladies are more concerned about the well-being of their partners. So do make this session live again next week. Same place, same time. That is 7:30 p.m. Central European time and 9:30 p.m. Kenyan time or East African time. Till next week, I've been your host, Liquiani Eli, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap. Have a great night.